Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Parday. Today, I welcome Deb onto the show where we're going to be talking about self-confidence, the comfort zone, boundaries, distractions, and many, many more things. I'm interested to see where the conversation goes. So just a quick introduction to Deb. So Deb is a certified mindset confidence coach and speaker. Deb has the perfect combination of experience, skill, and intuition to support women in life and business to thrive. She is a dynamic, positive force who brings a delicate balance of support and motivation, of insight and perspective to working with her clients in groups and one-on-one. So welcome to the show today, Deb. Glad to have
Thank
you on.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to be here, Johnny. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. Appreciate you. So glad to have you on, as I mentioned. Yeah, Deb, be really interesting to hear. Obviously, you're doing some great work with helping women like really like thrive in life. I know there's a lot of people in general kind of like struggling out there. I get a lot of messages. I've been through my own struggles, and you might have
Mhm.
yourself as well, and we all go through those things. So yeah, I know you were obviously working in like sales before. You're a sales director,
Mhm.
and now you're really like focusing on helping women. What's kind of inspired you to make that move and really help women in particular really thrive?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Johnny. And actually, I should have a caveat. I support mostly women and a few smart men. I do have male clients too,
Oh,
but
awesome.
my focus has been, I know it's fun. And I actually have a husband-wife team, which has been really creative as well. It's almost like I have three clients, you know, her, him, and then them as a partnership as well. So it gets to be very, very creative. But great question. Yeah, I was in the top 2% of a multi-billion-dollar direct sales company for over 2 decades, and I have been coaching um, women in that industry for that time. And then I got certified in 2017 as a coach, and it kind of came as a kind of a happenstance. And what's interesting is it ended up evolving into this is my sweet spot. This is where I shine. And it's interesting how, like, COVID was a blessing because I got to launch into saying, I'm a coach. And that was pretty interesting to be able to say that and
Mm.
step into it. And then more people asked about it. And then I had to take the leap, which I was asking and encouraging my clients to be able to step out of their comfort zone. And how authentic am I if I'm not doing the same thing? So in February of last year, I decided, you know what? I've been doing the sales and focusing on that, and that was in the front part, and I was just kind of doing the coaching on the side. But that was where my passion was. That was where I just thrived and really got a kick out of it. So I had to take that leap. I had to essentially do what I'd been telling others and supporting others in doing, and I had to step out of my comfort zone and take that leap and say, okay, I'm a coach full time. Gulp. You know, it was interesting. And what's crazy is how the world lines up for you, how the universe and clients ended up showing up. So what I was most fearful about um, didn't even happen because oftentimes we make the things that we're scared to do, we make it bigger than it needs to be, and it just takes a step. It takes a step, a decision, and I was able to do that in February. So I made the decision in February, and it didn't really take effect until I think it was sometime in May. So haven't even been in coaching full time for a year, but I've been coaching for well over 20 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that certainly does. I love that. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned about being authentic and yeah, like really getting out of your comfort zone and
Mm-hmm.
going into this probably what was a new world you had well, you obviously had like parts of it involved in your life, but actually
Mm-hmm.
going fully into this is awesome. I kind of really wanted to touch on that actually, the comfort zone, because
Mm-hmm.
it's talked about a lot in the personal growth space. I know I've kind of had
Mm-hmm.
my own personal experience of coming out of my comfort zone and benefits with it. For you, like with the people you work with or in your own experience, do you find like people it's best when people do like a massive jump out of that comfort zone? Is it little steps? Do you find some people mix
Mm-hmm.
it, or is it just a little bit of a mixture? Just be really
Mm-hmm.
interested to hear,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some people who think
Well, real.
yeah, listening, or sometimes think, get out of my comfort zone is a massive jump. Some people like to take it slowly. Yeah, just be really interested to hear.
It's like I've got to dive off the cliff,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, right? Well, it's interesting with your comfort zone. I mean, really, it's called a safety zone. Your brain is doing its job. It's your brain is designed to keep you safe and protect you. So if you think about things that are outside of our comfort zone, there's things that we're not familiar with, things that we haven't done before typically, right? So that's where it's the unknown. It's the and so we oftentimes in our mind will make it seem bigger and loom even brighter than it really needs to have credit for. So and everybody has to do what's works for them, but at some point you have to make a decision. And I'm curious, have you heard the story and of like little bunnies? Do you know about the little bunny story?
Nothing comes to mind when you mention it.
Okay, well let me refresh it, because
Let's
this
go for
this
it.
yeah, it's a great, I love to use analogies. People relate to analogies. And so there's a little bunny, and I live in Colorado, and there we have bunnies. They're in my yard all the time. But anyway, if you've ever seen a little bunny, and they'll hop a lot, and then they'll stop, and they'll just kind of almost like they're trying to hide in the grass or something. And sometimes when bunnies get scared, they'll sit there for a long time, and they'll just start to shake. They'll just, they're afraid to move because of fear of something, right? We do the same thing. But what happens with that bunny, if that bunny doesn't take a step, it doesn't make a movement, they may like get so frightened and their heart starts palpitating so fast. Have you ever heard the scared to death idiom? Like,
Yeah.
I was scared to death. Well, that's what can happen with bunnies, is that they can, basically get themselves so worked up, so to speak, that they don't move, they don't take a step because they're so frightened. And it's peril, right? So all we need to do, yes, you can take a big leap, but oftentimes people won't do a big leap in their first step. They just need to take one step, one tiny little step. For that bunny, one tiny little movement can get them out of that fearful, that frightened area, that space that we get in. And that's all it takes, is just one tiny little step. And then it releases endorphins, it releases like that angst. And then then you're going to take another step and another step. And some people get to the point of like, let's do it, I'm in, let's go for it. But they had to start with that first step. So everybody needs to decide what works for them. But really, with our comfort zone, our brain's trying to keep us safe. I had a coach once give me a story that another way to describe a comfort or a safety zone is like it's a yard. Like if we're in our yard, and like say that you're playing with some young people that are your loved ones. They could be your kids, nieces and nephews, somebody that you care about as a little one that's playing with a ball in the front yard. You're sitting on the porch drinking some tea or your favorite beverage, and the ball starts going towards the street. Now, you could be in a safe neighborhood, you could be in a safe place, and there could be no cars for miles. But that curb is kind of like just an impending doom, impending peril. There could be danger on the other side of that curb. So just like we have a safety zone, that curb represents an area in our brain that, oh my gosh, you can't go there. Stop, don't go. And that's what we say to the kids when the ball starts running towards the street, because the kid would run, they're naive and they're like, okay, I'm in, and they would run out in the street. There could be cars, a bunch of cars, but if you're in a safe area and there aren't cars, even though there aren't cars, our brain stops us and we stop them from going any further. So that's another example of how our brain is designed, and it's wired to keep us safe. Like, don't go over there because there could be this and this and this that are bad, or that something negative could happen to us. So it's natural that we stay in our comfort or safety zone. But if we want to make a choice, and we step into the role of, hey, I got myself, I can take care of myself, I'm going to be okay, nothing, I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, there can be some negative things that happen, but those are also lessons along the way. Some of the things that are negative things that happen give us the biggest blessings, because we learn what not to do. We learn how we stumble. I mean, like, how do you learn how to not touch a hot stove? Typically
Mm.
because you've touched a hot stove, or if you're riding a bike, can you learn how to ride a bike without falling down? Not usually. Right? I mean, but you learn after a while, after taking these tiny little steps, that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And that's why it's kind of nice to have a coach that helps you along, because then you can kind of talk through and you can kind of figure out, what are the steps? What does that first step look like? And what are the pitfalls that could happen? Do we look at them, or do we just go for it? And in different situations, you need to kind of have set up yourself in tools and protective gear, so to speak, and whatever that is. Not just in a metaphor, but sometimes you need to have yourself set up before you do take those steps out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I like what you touched on with. I like those analogies. First of all, like the curb, and I like what you said about the buddies. I've not heard that. Excuse me, not heard the bunny one before. I was yeah, I'm curious to know. Like, obviously, you touched on like the coach a little bit there. I've personally found myself, and like people I've worked with in the past, can come up with some very, let's say, logically sounding excuses or things that kind of hold them back. Like, oh yeah, it just wasn't the right day, or I just got to work on this first before I start. With a sales background, you probably heard this before as well, but like both the coaching and the sales side. I wondered if you had much experience of heard people with those kind of excuses in coaching, and what the benefit of maybe a coach can be to challenge that.
Well, ultimately, if you're making excuses, there is that fear of something on the other side of that, whatever that is. And you know what? If people don't want to make the decision and don't want to go forward, that's fine. But will they be haunted that they never did? So that's the where you have to get to the point of like, well, do you really want to go further? Because you don't have to. You don't have to. Life is made up of a series of choices, right? So all of us get to choose what we're doing. But if you have an inkling, if there's something that keeps haunting you, that like, I want to do this, or this is something that I could do, and I don't know if you see the pause in there. Sometimes we say I should do this or should do that, and I always say, careful about shoulding on yourself. It doesn't take us anywhere, because it's just it ends up being shame and demeaning in should. But I invite the alternative being could, because that offers choice. Yes, you could make that choice, and you could take the steps to do XYZ, whatever that it is that's out of your comfort zone. And maybe it's being more strategic about when that happens. Give yourself grace. Maybe it is not the right time. Maybe there's all kinds of things going on, and that's okay too. But there's consequences in that too. So it's a matter of, talking about the consequences of, well, okay, so what are the consequences of not doing the things that you're, saying that you're not doing for whatever reason? And maybe it is a logical choice. It's all subjective, isn't it? And none of us have the crystal ball about like when those choices are. I love the idea of like feeling like we're in the right place at the right time, and that people are brought into our world at the right time and the right opportunity. And I'm just looking for matches. Not everyone out there will be my client, and that's okay. It's okay. Hopefully they'll be matched up with someone else. But I know that one thing that I keep telling myself is, the more that I don't put myself out there, the more that I don't, or that I do hold myself back. And I've done that. I hold myself back. Oh my gosh. I've thought about hosting a podcast. I've actually enjoyed being on podcasts right now, but maybe sometime in my future, maybe I will be a host of a podcast. That hasn't been my path or my choice. So it's not really an excuse that I'm not doing it. It's just not time yet. And that's okay. And at the same time, putting out my group programs and getting those things out, I can hold myself back from that all day long. But basically what it does is it hurts others, because I know I do have things that I could share with people that can support them, because I've been there. That's one thing that helps, help women in business and life, because wherever we go, there we are, right? So it's because I have the sales experience and the background that I can, we can talk about creative ideas about what they need to do. But oftentimes, this is what's getting in the way. It's our mindset. It's, how we lean into and we make excuses. So it's just a matter of, if we're comfortable doing that, then you end up in that resistance place. And how comfortable is that to live your life feeling like you're not doing the thing that you're meant to do and not being out there? And how many people are not able to do the things because of your gift? You're not living in your gift. And that's what we really need to do. Is if everybody lived in their gift, oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Yeah.
What would our world be like if everybody was really truly living in their gifts and their talents, and there was an ability of an option of like being in community and being in abundance, and not being in a competitive spirit, but in a supportive and authentic, supportive, collaborative experience.
I think that's some good point. Great points you said about actually asking yourself, is it the right time, or is it like I'm holding back my gifts? So it's a question that only the individual. I feel like only the individual will know the answers to.
Yeah,
Honest with
yeah.
themselves.
Well, that's the art of asking questions, isn't it?
That's what a coach. Yeah, that's the beauty of having a coach as well, to ask you some of those tough questions. I love it. So I want to touch on like boundaries a little bit, because I know there's quite a lot of people like struggle with it, setting it. I know I've been guilty of in the past of like not setting them, and perhaps saying yes to things I want to say no to, and all these kind of things. Do you see like setting boundaries as a challenge in an area of your work for people?
Oh my gosh. Boundaries are part of every conversation. I mean, well, not every conversation, but with every client, boundaries will come up in conversation at one point or another, because that's also part of life. That's part of who we are, and what's ironic about it is, like, the comfort zone that we were talking about, those are boundaries, right? That's keeping us safe in a boundary. We've got physical boundaries, we've got emotional boundaries, we've got intellectual boundaries, all of them. What do you learn when you have the awareness? Because really, all of it's awareness is the key. When you realize that you're doing something more than you should, or that you're not saying no in times when you're feeling the consequence of whatever's happening, like, dang, how come I keep letting that? Because we get something out of everything we do. So if we're not setting a boundary, then we kind of get what we are setting ourselves up for. I oftentimes hear people talking about like family and needing to set boundaries with family activities, or with volunteer situations. I'm in that situation now where I said yes to a major volunteer role, and I didn't anticipate how much time it was going to take. I'm happy to do it, but yet saying yes to doing that is saying no to something else. So we have to realize, when we don't set boundaries, oftentimes we're saying no to ourselves, because we're giving someone else or something else more power and more weight and benefit than we're giving and honoring our own self. So boundaries truly are a gift to us when we can decide that it's time to make them. And maybe it's not time when things are happening at one point or another, but then once you become aware of it, it's in our best interest to try to figure out how to establish that boundary. And especially if you're setting boundaries with other people and you're showing up differently, you're a different person, and then people will be like, oh my gosh, you always were going to be the one doing XYZ. And you're like, you know what? I'm just not comfortable doing that now. I won't be able to do that. And that's standing for yourself. And that's where the confidence comes in, where you can build your own confidence and fall in love with yourself and really feel grounded in who you are and know what's important to you. That can help us in establishing better boundaries and creating those areas where it's going to be in support of ourselves, which then, because boundaries keep us safe, right? Like, you think about physical boundaries, you think about a fence. A fence helping the dogs stay in the yard or the kids stay in the yard and keeping them safe and protected, just like that comfort zone. So sometimes, being able to say no to a family member that's, constantly doing something that isn't comfortable, it's basically giving yourself the confidence to stand up for yourself and say, you know what, that's not okay. So I'm not going to do that now. It's a huge step to be able to do that. And so you have to figure out like what's, and sometimes, like the choice that I made, it's all choices, right? The choice that I made to say yes for my volunteer activity, it's not really hurting me. It could but it's all choices. Like how much I do, that's my choice. So it's putting me still, even though I may set a different boundary down the road, but this is what I've decided to do now, but I've had to set some significant boundaries after some awareness with some family members, and it's a daily choice, and it's okay, and if it doesn't feel okay after you've made that choice with the boundaries, you can modify it. It's like you can reestablish, you can rebuild your fence however you need to do it. And it's ultimately, it comes down to just, how can I honor myself? How can I honor who I am and what's important to me? But it's taken a long time for me to come to that grips, and I'm not great at it. I mean, I think that's why I'm able to support my clients too, is that I'm not perfect, and I'm in it with them. I'm like, oh my gosh, look what I've done. That's part of it, is being honest and compassionate. So then you're able to support others. But coaching more is about asking questions and helping them have their own ahas, right? It's not about me telling them what they need to do. It's what they want to choose to do for themselves. It's all opportunity. Mm-hmm. Does that help?
Yeah. I'm interested to know about the like setting boundaries and kind of like consciously doing that. Do you find like people are able to recognize them differently? Maybe some people just need to like take some time out and then understand what their boundaries are in like different areas of life or different situation. Some people just establish them like on the spot and then they feel into it. Or is it kind of a bit of a mixture, do you find? What again is it?
I'd say, well, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's very personal. It's probably different with everyone. A boundary that I have, you might feel like that's too confining, or you'll be like, oh my gosh, mine would need to be tighter than that. Everybody, because it's all like where you are in your world and what's important to you. So yeah, I mean, and they can change. They can change readily. But until there was a situation or a problem of some kind, typically you're not aware of them because you're fine, right? So if you're going along and everything's hunky dory, it's fine. Nobody else needs to tell you what your boundary is, but if there's something where it's usually when there's some kind of conflict, or you feel like you're taken advantage of, or you feel like you're shoulding, like I shouldn't do that. I really shouldn't, you start hearing that a lot. And it's like, all right, well, let's talk about it. What is it that you're doing, and what could you do that's different? And are you willing? So that's the other part of all of this. You first have the awareness, you come up with ideas about what you could do in difference, but are you willing to do it? If you're not willing to do it, then there's no reason to go about it. But you can have the conversation. You're like, oh, well, I'm aware of it. Okay. Like just with my volunteering, I'm aware that I'm doing it, and I still love doing it, but I'm not willing to change quite yet. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes
so sense. If you're not willing, then that the willingness is the biggest piece. It's my favorite piece, because I use this analogy a lot. If you feel like you need to lose 20 pounds and you start looking at, okay, what are the options to do that? Well, I could eat less and I could exercise more, and and then you're like, okay, great, that's great. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Are you willing to do that? Well, I'm kind of enjoying my ice cream every night, and I don't know if I really want to be walking around the block, and it's kind of a pain to go to the gym, and I don't know, maybe I am kind of comfortable. These clothes fit, I'd have to go shopping to get more. And so then you're not willing. So take that goal away. I mean, I'm helping people a lot, especially beginning of the year, we start talking a lot about goals and things that you want to work towards in your life, and, accountability and all that stuff. But if you're not willing, why set yourself up?
Yeah, I like what you said about actually when there's a problems or conflict, I think was the term you used, when
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
can actually identify. I mean, I found that in my own life, like through situations, it's like, in workplace things, it's like, well, actually, no, I don't want to be doing that. That's not my role or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
like and then suddenly like in the sales one, it's like, oh yeah, you tell them the price is going up, come back 4 weeks later, can I have it at the old price? No. it's it would be like okay in those situations or with friends and family, and then like something like dating or relationships, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you go into a difficult one, like even had that recently, and it's like, okay, I did express what I wanted, but maybe not to the extent there, and I realized actually that was a boundary for me. And you go through
Mm-hmm.
those
Mm-hmm.
situations and realize it. That's so I can,
Right.
yeah, totally relate to that. So it's a really good
Yeah. Well,
point.
and what's interesting, like with boundaries and habits, I mean, habits kind of go in line with boundaries because they're
Mm,
kind of part of things. I mean, if you think about it, sometimes it's making a decision and it's clear cut.
mm,
Like, you wouldn't say you're either a smoker or you're not.
mm,
Well, it's if you're not a smoker, you're not tempted by smoking because that's just not what you're doing. Some people have that with alcohol. Myself, I love a glass of wine every now and again, but people that don't, it's just a clear cut thing. I mean, I'm allergic to nuts, so am I going to eat a nut? That's a boundary because I die if I do. So
no,
the consequence is a little bit too hard to sneak it, so it's just not worth it. So what's the alternative? Like with dating, I mean, yeah, you have to decide what's important to you, and if it's not a match, then being able to stand up for yourself and say, this doesn't work for me. But there's also compromise that has to come into play there, because nobody's perfect. We want to
no,
believe we are, but
nobody is. No, it's true.
give ourselves a little grace because nobody is. But you're just looking for somebody that's perfect for you, right? That's
Mm,
perfect for what you want and what would fit with your life.
yeah.
And maybe sometimes maybe relaxing a boundary is okay because you're willing to do that, to have that person in your life.
Mm, it's true. That's a good point as well. Yeah, with these,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just it can't. It sounds like it comes back to the awareness from what you're saying, and just
Mm-hmm.
as you go through the situations. I love that. Talking of like sort of awareness, and I know you look at helping people, so like they might be a bit stuck in life. I was having a look on your
Mm,
website, a bit frustrated, and they're like, yeah, just in that position. I've certainly been there. I've worked with people who've been in that position. I think most of us can relate to that from the people I've spoken
right.
to in my
Yeah.
life, right? Do you find those, who have come to you for help that you've worked with, they've got this stuck in frustration because they've got like no idea where they want to go in life, what they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
or they know what they want to do, but they've got like no idea how to get there? Or again,
Mm-hmm.
is it a little bit of a mix?
Both.
Right.
For sure, both. For sure, both. Like I know years ago, I just kept saying, I know I'm meant for more. I don't, but I
Mm,
just didn't know what that looked like. And my self-esteem, I mean, my confidence was pretty high, which
mm.
is weird. But my
No, no,
self-esteem, like my
makes
value
sense.
and my confidence with myself was not,
Mm,
they were not aligned. It was completely out of whack. So I felt like, I mean, I enjoyed being, for example, I enjoyed speaking on a stage,
mm.
but yet who would like me? Why would anyone like
Can
me?
relate to this very
Seriously,
quickly. Yeah.
seriously, I had that. I mean, that was, um, I mean, people that were around me were surprised that I felt that way. But we all have different shadow sides of ourselves that, I mean, I remember I went through there was an exercise I was doing in one of the courses I was in, and you were supposed to stand right in front of another and kind of in their bubble, like in the like a little bit closer than what you'd want to be with somebody you don't know. And we were invited to I think each person was given a certain amount of time, and you're supposed to just rattle off all these great things about yourself, like tell us who you are and what you're about and what you're about. And I through tears I was in a loop of I'm nice, I'm kind, and that's all I could come up with. I was just in a loop of I'm nice and I'm kind. And I'm like, and now I look back on that like, wow, look at how far I've come, right? Because oftentimes we look at how far we've not what we haven't done, right? But why don't we look at, in the flip side, look at how far we have come. And now I could rattle off, but I've worked at it. I've made the choice, and I'm willing to make that choice to say, yes, I'm dynamic, I'm charismatic, I'm great on stage, I'm a good coach, so now I can come up with more than just I'm nice and I'm kind, but it takes time and it takes effort and it takes willingness to do that. So, like, whether it's, if you know where you want to be or you don't know where you want to be, they're all steps in the process. And all of us were created for a lot more than what we're doing. Isn't it that the capacity that we're using, like a tiny part of our brain, we're using a tiny part about what our skills and abilities are. And that's kind of the beauty of working with somebody and helping them discover different parts of themselves so they can come out and shine, and they can really feel vibrant in who they are and step into their greatness, whatever that is, and it's not for us to judge at all. It's about what's important and what each person feels they want for themselves. So yeah, and I really enjoy supporting people in that, because I know I appreciated the support that I got as I was trying to, come out of that feeling of being in a pit and just not feeling valued, but I wasn't valuing myself. And so I felt like, since I wasn't valuing myself, others weren't valuing me either. So there's a little bit of the growth that happens, and being vulnerable in that too, so yeah, it's a process. It really is a process. But if somebody really does feel like they're made for more, or they feel like there's something else out there, that piece in front of them that I just don't know what it is, but let's explore, let's see if we can figure out what that is. But where are you, and how do you feel about yourself? I always one of my challenges for my clients is to come up with an awesome list for themselves. And I would say probably 98% of them gulp when we talk about it, because they're not typically in just the loop of nice and kind, but sometimes they can only come up with 5 or 10, maybe 15 things that they say are awesome about themselves. So it's kind of cool to be able to do that and stretch yourself a little bit, but also in our society, what are you, boastful? Are you, don't get above your graces, or, like, you don't want to be cocky. There's a balance from being confident and cocky. There's having a little bit of grace and humility in it as well. So there's something about being able to toot your own horn. But at some point, when we're little, 5 and 6, they're, kids are standing up going, oh, I'm awesome, I'm great, right? And at what age do we stop doing that? Because society has squelched us in being able to say how great we are. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. It's lost somewhere along the line.
But just reconnecting with that again, and love those exercises you're trying to give them to, you're giving them to reconnect with themselves. Yeah. That awesomeness, like, yeah, I like the I've got in the back of my journal, it's like I write 50 beliefs under each question. It's like 50 like beliefs why I deserve abundance and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So it's like, or the characteristics and things like that, and just reading them again and again. It's really helpful. So I do love that exercise. I've too given that to people, and they're like, oh, I find this really hard. We're not trained to do it. It's just
no, it is out of our comfort zone. It is, a different step, and that's beautiful to be able to, because you can reprogram your mind. We have, what is it, 60,000 thoughts a day, and majority of them are negative, and then they're repetitive. Like, most of our thoughts are the same ones we had yesterday. So if you can kind of reprogram yourself by either the affirmations or thoughts about who you are, it's beautiful, because that's how you can kind of rewire your brain. Those spots there. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's great. I like that exercise. Yeah. That's wonderful. Shawnee, this is fun.
Love it. So yeah, Deb, just before we sort of like wrap things up today, I just really want to know what would be your number one confidence tip that you could leave us with today?
Well, maybe it is the awesome list. And I actually have something that is a freebie that, people can take. It's, I think it's called, I got to remember, 5 steps to boost your confidence. So I have that as, because it's really important to be able to do that. So, and it's part of creating an awesome list. And that's, it's something that we can do right now today. I mean, honestly, if you're listening to this, I challenge you to write even 10 things that are awesome, or what makes you awesome, what makes you unique, what makes you who you are. And then grow that list. So, but yeah, I can give you the link so your listeners can get in there and work through that list. I've also got one that's 3 simple steps to choose your word of the year, which is fun too, because especially in the beginning of the year, a lot of people like to claim their word of the year. It's funny, the word I claimed,
It's not too late to claim your word.
It's not, no, it's not too late. And they can be very powerful. I'll apologize for the word that I picked in 2020. I picked pivot. Before the pandemic, I picked pivot, and I was like, pivot we did all year. So they can be very powerful. But anyway, I'm happy to share that as well, because it's kind of a fun way of figuring out where you want to be focused during the year. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Love that bit of guidance you gave us. So yeah, Deb,
Yeah.
is there anything else you wanted to share with us, any kind of like links, or where the listener could find you?
Oh yeah. Well, debstarkeycoaching.com is where my my website lives. And I like to do one-on-one coaching, but I also have several group programs. I'm doing an accountability circle, Empower Her accountability circle, and I start those throughout the year. And then another program that I've done that's been very, very valuable, and it's all about limiting beliefs. Reclaim your power, shattering the chains of limiting beliefs, because oftentimes that's what holds us back, is because we've got these old, outdated, tarnished beliefs about ourselves or about things in our life, and they just don't work anymore. And so it's trying to reprogram and get those moving along. So yeah, however I can be supportive of people, happy to do it. And reach out. I look forward to connecting with people, or getting on my mailing list, finding out stuff that I've got going on. Awesome. So Johnny, I love that you're giving this to the world, really. Look at us. We're able to have this conversation, and we're thousands of miles apart. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is awesome. No, we'll be sure to link all the stuff you've said, because I know there's a ton of value you give, and the listener can get from you. So yeah, we'll link those in the show notes below. So once again, Deb, been a pleasure speaking to you today, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.